They said a giant white wolf lived deep inside the ancient forest, a beast so terrifying that no one who ever saw it returned alive. But for one lonely girl, that same white wolf had been leaving gifts outside her cottage every single morning for 17 years. Rare flowers that bloomed only under the full moon. Healing herbs no hunter had ever found. Pure white feathers from birds no one believed still existed. And beside every gift, the same enormous wolf tracks. Certain that only one person could command such a legendary creature, she finally confronted the feared Alpha King, the ruler of every wolf in the north. But his answer changed everything. He looked her in the eyes and said, "I know nothing about those gifts." If the Alpha King was telling the truth, then who had been secretly protecting her entire life? And why did the mysterious white wolf seem willing to die to keep that secret buried? The truth hidden beneath the forest was far older than either of them imagined, and it was about to change both their destinies forever. The morning mist still clung to the towering pines when Elara slowly opened the door of her lonely woodland cottage. She didn't look surprised. She looked hopeful. For 17 years, every sunrise had begun the same way. She stepped outside. She looked down. And another impossible gift waited for her. This morning it was a bundle of moon lilies, their silver petals still glowing with drops of fresh dew. They only bloomed beneath the full moon and withered before sunrise. Yet somehow they rested perfectly fresh on the flat stone beside her doorstep. Around them were the same enormous wolf tracks. Each footprint was almost twice the size of her hand. Deep, perfectly shaped, as if an impossibly powerful creature had stood there only moments ago. Elara carefully knelt beside the flowers, tracing one of the giant prints with trembling fingers. Cold, fresh. Whoever had left them had been here only minutes earlier. She quickly lifted her eyes toward the endless forest. Nothing. Only silent trees swaying gently beneath the morning breeze. No movement. No shadow. No white wolf. She sighed softly. Another morning. Another mystery without an answer. The villagers believed she should fear these gifts. They whispered that no ordinary beast would collect impossible flowers from forbidden mountains. Some believed the white wolf was marking her as its future prey. Others insisted the forest spirits had cursed her before she was even born. Because of those stories, no one visited her cottage anymore. Children were warned never to walk near her home. Hunters avoided the narrow trail leading through the Silverpine Forest. Even merchants refused to stop at her door. Loneliness had become her closest companion. Yet despite everything, she could never hate the unseen guardian. Every gift arrived exactly when she needed it most. When winter froze the forest, bundles of dry firewood mysteriously appeared outside her home. When sickness left her too weak to gather medicine, rare healing herbs waited beside the doorstep before sunrise. When storms destroyed her roof, fresh timber somehow appeared nearby without explanation. Someone had watched over her for years. Silently, patiently, without asking for anything in return. That thought both comforted and frightened her. Because whoever protected her knew every part of her life. But she knew absolutely nothing about them. Elara gently gathered the moon lilies into her arms and stepped back inside the cottage. The tiny wooden home was simple. A stone fireplace, a worn table, shelves lined with dried herbs taught to her by the old healer who had raised her. Everything she owned had been repaired countless times. Nothing was luxurious. Yet every corner carried memories of the only person who had ever called her family. The old healer had once told her something strange before passing away. The forest protects those it remembers. At the time, Elara had believed they were simply comforting words. Now, she wasn't so sure. She carefully placed the moon lilies inside a clay vase filled with fresh spring water. As she adjusted the flowers, something slipped from beneath the stems. A small piece of smooth, white stone. She frowned. The stone hadn't been there before. Someone had carved a strange symbol into its surface. Not words. Not letters. A single crescent moon surrounded by 4 tiny stars. She had never seen the mark before. Yet somehow, looking at it filled her heart with an emotion she couldn't explain. It didn't feel unfamiliar. It felt forgotten. Outside, the forest suddenly fell silent. No birds sang. No leaves moved. The peaceful morning disappeared beneath an unnatural stillness. Elara slowly walked back toward the open doorway. The strange stone remained tightly held in her hand. As she stepped outside, once more, she noticed something that made her heart stop. The giant wolf tracks that had surrounded the flowers only moments ago were disappearing, one by one, as though the earth itself was swallowing them whole. Within seconds, every footprint had vanished, leaving only untouched grass behind. Elara stood frozen. Someone, or something, did not want those tracks to remain. And for the first time in 17 years, she realized the mysterious guardian wasn't simply leaving gifts anymore.
It was trying to tell her something.
Elara remained standing outside her cottage long after the last wolf track disappeared. The strange stone felt heavier in her hand than it should have. It was only a small piece of smooth white rock, yet it carried a weight that settled deep inside her heart. She looked around the clearing once more. The forest had returned to normal. Birds began singing again. The breeze gently moved through the branches. It was almost as if nothing unusual had happened. Almost. She closed her fingers around the carved stone and slipped it into the pocket of her cloak. For years, the mysterious gifts had arrived without explanation. But never before had they carried a message. Never before had they left behind a symbol.
Something had changed, and she could feel it.
Later that morning, Elara carried a basket of dried herbs toward the village market. It was the only way she earned enough to survive through the colder months. As always, conversations faded the moment she arrived. People lowered their voices. Some turned away. Others stared at the bracelet of silver vines around her wrist before quickly looking elsewhere. No one asked where she had gotten it. No one wanted to know. Fear was easier than curiosity. Elara quietly arranged her herbs on the old wooden stall that had belonged to the healer who raised her. Hours passed. Only one elderly woman stopped to buy medicine. Everyone else avoided her table completely. She had grown used to it. Still, being ignored never stopped hurting. As the afternoon sun reached its highest point, a group of hunters entered the village. Their clothes were torn. Their faces were pale. One of them carried deep claw marks across his shoulder. The entire marketplace fell silent. The village elder hurried toward them. What happened? The oldest hunter struggled to catch his breath. We saw it. No one needed to ask what he meant. The white wolf. A wave of fear swept through the crowd. It was watching us from the cliffs. I've hunted these forests for 30 years, another hunter whispered. I've never seen anything so large. Did it attack? Someone asked. The hunters slowly shook their heads.
No.
It simply watched, and when we tried to follow it, it disappeared. The frightened whispers spread through the market like wildfire. It's a warning. The beast has returned. The forest is cursed. One frightened villager suddenly turned toward Elara. It always appears near her. Another voice quickly joined in. The gifts. The tracks. It has chosen her. Within moments, dozens of fearful eyes rested on Elara. Not with kindness. Not with sympathy. With suspicion. As though her very existence invited danger into their peaceful lives. Elara quietly packed the herbs that no one had purchased. She didn't defend herself. She never did. Some hearts refused to listen once fear had taken hold. As she began walking home, she noticed something unusual. The hunters had described the white wolf as terrifying, but none of them had said it attacked. None of them had even claimed it growled. It simply watched, the same way the glowing silver eyes had watched her that morning. Not with hatred, with recognition. The thought refused to leave her mind. As sunset painted the forest in shades of gold and crimson, Elara returned to her lonely cottage. She removed the strange white stone from her pocket and placed it on the wooden table beside the silver bracelet. The carved symbol caught the fading sunlight. For just an instant, the crescent moon seemed to shimmer. Elara leaned closer. The mark wasn't glowing. It was reflecting light from somewhere behind her. She slowly turned toward the open window. Far beyond the clearing, At the edge of the Silverpine Forest, a massive white figure stood perfectly still between the trees. Its snow-white fur shimmered beneath the evening light. Its silver eyes never left hers. Neither of them moved. Neither of them looked away. Then, as quietly as it had appeared, the giant white wolf stepped backward into the shadows and vanished. Elara's heart pounded inside her chest. This time, she had seen it clearly. The mysterious guardian was real, and for reasons she could not understand, it was no longer hiding from her. Elara did not sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the white wolf standing at the edge of the forest. Its silver eyes haunted her thoughts. There had been no rage in them, no hunger, only a strange sadness that lingered in her heart long after the creature disappeared. Before dawn, she lit a small lantern and walked back to the clearing outside her cottage. For years she had searched for answers. This morning, she made a decision. She would follow the next trail, no matter where it led. The forest remained quiet as the eastern sky slowly brightened. Then, almost as if the woods were holding their breath, a cold wind swept through the trees. The lantern flame flickered. The birds stopped singing. Elara's heartbeat quickened. She looked toward the flat stone beside her doorway. Another gift had appeared. She hadn't heard a single sound. No footsteps. No growl. Nothing. Resting on the stone was a bundle of fresh lavender tied together with a silver thread. Beneath it lay another smooth, white stone. Another carved symbol. This one was different. Instead of a crescent moon surrounded by stars, it showed two wolves standing beneath a single full moon. Elara carefully picked it up. The carving was astonishingly detailed, almost too perfect to have been made by human hands. She slipped both the lavender and the stone into her basket before kneeling beside the enormous wolf tracks. They were fresh, deeper than ever before. Without allowing herself time to lose courage, she began following them into the Silverpine Forest. For the first time in 17 years, the tracks did not disappear. They continued through towering pines covered in morning mist, across narrow streams, over ancient roots twisted like sleeping serpents. Every step carried her farther from the only home she had ever known. The deeper she walked, the stranger the forest became. Flowers she had never seen bloomed beside the trail. Birds watched silently from branches without making a sound. Even the air felt older, as though this part of the forest remembered stories forgotten by the rest of the world. After nearly an hour, the giant footprints suddenly stopped. Not because they faded, because they ended before an enormous stone arch completely covered in emerald moss. Its surface was carved with the very same crescent moon symbol she had discovered the previous day. Elara slowly reached out. The moment her fingertips brushed the ancient carving, a low vibration echoed beneath the ground. Dust drifted from the stones. The moss trembled. Then, nothing. The forest became silent once again. She stepped back, confused. Before she could examine the arch more closely, distant voices echoed through the trees.
Men.
Armed men. She quickly hid behind a fallen log as a group of mounted wolf warriors rode past the clearing. Their armor carried the silver crest of the Northern Wolf Kingdom. Every rider wore a tense expression. One soldier finally broke the silence. The Alpha King wants the entire forest searched. Another nodded. He disappeared again last night. A third rider lowered his voice. That's the third time this month. No one knows where he goes. And no one dares ask. Elara's breath caught. The Alpha King, gone from his palace again. On the very same night another mysterious gift had appeared outside her cottage. The coincidence was becoming impossible to ignore. As the soldiers disappeared deeper into the forest, Elara looked back toward the ancient stone arch. For a brief moment, she thought she saw a massive white tail disappear behind it. Then the image was gone. Only silence remained. Clutching the carved stone tightly in her hand, Elara whispered the question that had consumed her heart for years. If you're trying to tell me something, why won't you let me find you? The unanswered question lingered in the air long after Elara whispered it. The ancient stone arch remained silent. No voice answered. No white wolf stepped from the shadows. Only the gentle wind moved through the towering pines. After waiting several long moments, Elara reluctantly turned away. She had learned one lesson over the years. The mysterious guardian always revealed only what it wanted her to know, never more. As she began the journey back toward her cottage, she noticed something unusual. The enormous wolf tracks had disappeared once again. Not gradually, completely. It was as though the forest itself had erased every trace of the creature's presence. Only the ancient stone in her pocket proved that any of it had truly happened. By the time Elara reached the village, the peaceful atmosphere had vanished. Horsemen wearing the silver crest of the northern wolf kingdom stood throughout the marketplace. Villagers watched nervously from their homes. No one dared approach the armored warriors. Word spread quickly. The Alpha King had entered the region. Very few people had ever seen him. Fewer still had spoken to him. Stories described him as a ruler whose presence alone silenced entire armies. Some called him merciless. Others believed he had never trusted humans enough to cross into their villages. Yet today, he was here. A line of soldiers suddenly formed along the main road. The villagers immediately stepped aside. The sound of slow approaching hoofbeats echoed through the square. Then he appeared. Mounted upon a magnificent black stallion rode the Alpha King. His dark cloak shifted gently in the wind. His expression revealed nothing.
Calm.
Unreadable. Almost cold. Yet his silver eyes quietly examined every corner of the village before finally stopping on Elara. For a single heartbeat, time itself seemed to stand still. Something unfamiliar crossed his eyes. Not surprise. Recognition. Just as she had seen in the White Wolf. Then it disappeared behind the same emotionless mask. Elara's heart pounded. She stepped forward before fear could stop her. For years she had searched for answers. Now the most powerful wolf in the kingdom stood only a few steps away. She refused to let the opportunity disappear. Ignoring the frightened whispers around her, she looked directly into the Alpha King's eyes. "There is something I need to ask you." The soldiers immediately tensed. No one spoke so boldly to their king. But the Alpha King quietly lifted one hand. The guard stepped back. He allowed her to continue. Elara took a slow breath. For 17 years. Someone has left mysterious gifts outside my cottage. They always arrive before sunrise. They are surrounded by the tracks of a giant white wolf. She watched him carefully. Not a single expression changed. Then she asked the question that had lived inside her heart since childhood. "Are you the one who has been leaving them?" The entire village fell silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. The Alpha King looked into her eyes for several long seconds. Then he answered.
His voice was calm.
Steady. Almost distant. "I know nothing about those gifts." No hesitation. No uncertainty. Only complete denial. The words struck Elara harder than she expected. Everything she had believed suddenly collapsed. If he truly knew nothing, then every answer she had imagined was wrong. But as the Alpha King gently turned his horse to leave, her eyes caught something that made her blood run cold. Hidden beneath the edge of his dark cloak, caught against the leather of his riding glove, was a single tiny blue flower. The same rare flower woven into the bracelet that had appeared outside her cottage only yesterday morning. The Alpha King rode away, without another word. Elara stood frozen in the middle of the silent village. His voice had denied everything. But that single flower had just accused him of a secret he refused to reveal. For the first time, she no longer knew whether she should trust his words, or the silent evidence he carried with him. The image of the tiny blue flower stayed in Elara's mind long after the Alpha King disappeared beyond the village gates. His words had been clear. He knew nothing, yet the evidence told a different story. The bracelet she now wore had been woven from the very same rare blossoms. Flowers that bloomed for only a few nights each year. Flowers that grew deep inside the forbidden heart of Silverpine Forest. It could not be a coincidence. Someone was hiding the truth, whether it was the Alpha King, or someone even more powerful. Elara could no longer ignore the mystery. That evening, she spread every strange object she had collected across the old wooden table inside her cottage. The 2 carved white stones, the silver vine bracelet, the the smooth white feathers, dried moon lilies from previous gifts. Every item carried the same feeling. None of them had been left by chance. She carefully placed the first carved stone beside the second. The crescent moon. The pair of wolves beneath the full moon. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, a faint silver light began glowing between the two stones. Thin lines of light slowly stretched across their surfaces until they connected like pieces of an unfinished map. Elara stepped back in shock. The glowing lines pointed toward the northern mountains, toward the oldest part of Silverpine Forest. The light lasted only a few seconds before fading once again. But it had already revealed its message. The stones were leading her somewhere. Before sunrise the next morning, Elara packed a small satchel with bread, water, dried herbs, and the mysterious stones. She locked the cottage behind her. For the first time since childhood, she willingly walked toward the deepest part of the forest. The journey was quiet. Mist curled between the ancient trees. The air grew colder with every step. Hours passed before she reached the place where the glowing map seemed to end. A forgotten circle of enormous standing stones rose from the earth. Their surfaces were covered with faded carvings nearly erased by centuries of wind and rain. In the center stood a weathered stone altar. Dust covered everything. No footprints. No signs of visitors. Only silence. Elara slowly approached the altar. As she brushed away the dirt, another familiar symbol appeared beneath her fingertips. The crescent moon. This one was much larger, carved with incredible precision. She placed one of the white stones inside the center of the carving. The ground trembled. A deep rumble echoed beneath the ruins. Hidden cracks spread across the altar. Then, with a heavy grinding sound, part of the ancient stone slowly slid aside. A narrow chamber appeared beneath the ruins. Cold air drifted upward. Elara hesitated. Every instinct warned her to leave. Yet the same quiet feeling that had guided her through years of unanswered questions urged her forward. She climbed down carefully. Inside the chamber rested dozens of weathered stone tablets arranged in perfect rows. Most had crumbled with age, but one remained untouched. Resting upon a carved pedestal, she gently lifted it. Ancient symbols covered its surface. At first they looked unfamiliar. Then, as her fingers traced the carvings, the strange markings slowly became readable, as though the stone itself wanted to be understood. The first line sent a chill through her entire body. When the White Guardian returns, the child of the promise must never stand alone. Elara's breath caught. Her hands trembled. She continued reading. The ancient record spoke of an oath made generations earlier, an oath sworn beneath the full moon, a sacred promise that a White Guardian would protect one chosen child until the day hidden truths could safely be revealed. No name appeared, only one title, the Child of the Promise. Elara slowly lowered the stone tablet. Her heartbeat echoed through the silent chamber. Son had been waiting for her long before she was born. And somewhere above the ruins, hidden among the towering trees, a pair of silver eyes watched over her once again. This time, not as a stranger, but as someone making certain the ancient promise was still being kept. Elara stood motionless inside the hidden chamber. The ancient stone tablet trembled in her hands. She read the words again, the Child of the Promise. The title echoed through her thoughts. It did not mention a name. It did not explain who the child was. Yet deep inside her heart, she already feared the answer. She carefully searched the remaining stone tablets scattered across the chamber.
Most had been damaged by time.
The carvings had faded beyond recognition. But one broken tablet still held a few readable lines. The Guardian must remain unseen. The truth must remain hidden. If the promise is revealed before the chosen hour, darkness will awaken. Elara frowned. The words raised even more questions than answers. Why must the Guardian stay hidden? What danger could possibly be so great that an entire lifetime of silence was required? As she reached for another tablet, a deep growl echoed somewhere above the ruins. She froze. It was not angry. It was a warning. Moments later, the sound of hurried footsteps surrounded the ancient stone circle. Voices. Armed men. Elara quickly extinguished her lantern and stepped deeper into the shadows of the underground chamber. Through the narrow opening above, she watched several armored wolf warriors enter the ruins. Their silver armor reflected the afternoon sunlight. Each carried the crest of the Northern Wolf Kingdom. One soldier pointed toward the broken altar. Someone opened it. Another immediately drew his sword. Search every corner. No one was supposed to find this place. Elara's pulse raced. Whoever these soldiers were searching for, it was almost certainly her. Before anyone could descend into the chamber, another voice echoed across the ruins.
Calm.
Powerful. Impossible to mistake. The search ends here. Every soldier immediately lowered his head. The Alpha King had arrived. He slowly approached the opened altar. His silver eyes studied the broken stone in complete silence. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he quietly looked toward the hidden entrance leading underground. His gaze stopped exactly where Elara stood concealed by darkness. Their eyes met. Only for an instant. He had found her, yet he gave no sign. Instead, he calmly turned back toward his soldiers. There is nothing here. One of the captains looked confused. But, Your Majesty, the seal has clearly been broken. The Alpha King's expression never changed. I said, there is nothing here. No one dared question him again. The soldiers reluctantly obeyed. Within minutes, the entire patrol disappeared into the forest. Silence returned once more. Elara slowly emerged from the underground chamber. The Alpha King still stood beside the ancient altar. His back remained turned toward her. Neither of them spoke. The wind carried fallen leaves between them. Finally, Elara broke the silence. You knew I was there. The Alpha King answered without looking at her. Yes. You told your soldiers to leave. I did. She stepped closer. Why? For several seconds, only silence answered. Then he spoke. Because some truths are not ready to be hunted. His words sent another wave of questions through her mind. She took another careful step. The white wolf. The gifts. The ancient promise. You know exactly what they mean.
Again.
Silence. At last, the Alpha King slowly turned to face her. His silver eyes held the same quiet sadness she had seen in the white wolf. But his voice remained controlled. I know enough to tell you this. The deeper you search, the greater the danger becomes. Elara tightened her grip around the ancient tablet. I've spent 17 years living with questions. I'm no longer afraid of the answers. For the first time, something shifted in the Alpha King's expression. Not fear for himself. Fear for her. It vanished almost instantly. He stepped aside, allowing her to leave the ruins. As she walked past him, she noticed something lying near the edge of his dark cloak. A single strand of snow-white fur.
Soft.
Brilliant. Almost glowing beneath the fading sunlight. Before she could look closer, a gust of wind carried it away into the forest. The Alpha King quietly watched it disappear. Then, without another word, he walked toward the trees and vanished among the shadows. Elara remained standing beside the ancient altar. Her heart was more certain than ever. The Alpha King had not lied because he wished to deceive her. He had lied because he was protecting a secret far older than either of them. And somewhere beyond the silent forest, that secret was beginning to awaken. The journey back to her cottage felt longer than ever before. Every answer Elara uncovered gave birth to 3 more questions. The ancient promise, the hidden chamber, the mysterious guardian, and above all, the Alpha King. His silence no longer felt like indifference. It felt like a burden he had carried alone for far too many years. That night, rain poured over the Silverpine Forest. Thunder rolled across the mountains as fierce winds shook the towering trees. Inside her cottage, Elara placed the ancient tablet beside the 2 carved stones. For hours she studied every symbol, hoping she had overlooked something. Then, a single drop of rain slipped through the roof and landed upon the tablet. The ancient carvings began to glow. Silver light slowly spread across the stone until forgotten words appeared between the old markings. Words that had been hidden for centuries. Elara leaned closer. Her heart nearly stopped as she read them. When the child of the promise learns the truth too soon, the oath will begin to break. Another line slowly appeared beneath it. Only the blood of the Alpha may choose when the guardian is revealed. Blood of the Alpha. Her mind immediately returned to the Alpha King. So he had known. Not part of the truth. All of it. A sharp pain tightened inside her chest. Every mysterious meeting. Every unanswered question. Every careful warning. He had never trusted her enough to tell her the truth. Outside, a deafening howl echoed across the storm. Not one wolf. Many. Elara rushed toward the window. Far beyond the trees, dozens of glowing eyes appeared among the darkness. An entire pack surrounded the clearing. But something felt terribly wrong. These wolves did not stand calmly like the White Guardian. They paced, growled, snarled at the cottage as though searching for something hidden inside. The peaceful silence that had protected her home for years had vanished. The ancient promise was weakening. Without warning, another howl shattered the night. Far louder, far deeper. The sound froze every wolf in the forest. They immediately lowered themselves toward the ground. A massive white figure emerged from the darkness. The white wolf. Rain poured across its snow-white fur. Its silver eyes remained fixed upon the surrounding pack. The enormous beast released another thunderous howl. Within seconds, every hostile wolf retreated into the forest. None dared challenge it. Elara stared in disbelief. The white wolf wasn't hunting her. It was defending her. As suddenly as it had appeared, the giant guardian slowly turned toward the cottage. For the first time, there was no distance between them. Only a few steps separated Elara from the legendary beast. The white wolf looked directly into her eyes. Not as a predator, not as a stranger, but with a sorrow so deep it almost felt human. Its gaze slowly shifted toward the glowing tablet resting on the wooden table inside the cottage. Then back to Elara, almost as if pleading with her to stop searching. Tears gathered in Elara's eyes. So it was true. You've been protecting me all this time. The white wolf remained perfectly still. Then, a single tear slipped from its silver eye. Before Elara could take one step closer, a blinding flash of lightning illuminated the entire clearing. For one brief heartbeat, the white wolf disappeared. Standing in exactly the same place was the Alpha King. Rain streamed from his dark cloak. His silver eyes carried the same sadness, the same quiet devotion, the same silent promise. Elara's world shattered. The white wolf and the Alpha King were one and the same. The truth she had searched for her entire life had finally revealed itself. But instead of bringing peace, it broke every ounce of trust she had placed in him. The rain continued to pour between them. For several long moments, neither of them moved. Elara could still see the image burned into her memory. One heartbeat earlier, a giant white wolf had been standing before her. Then the lightning had revealed the impossible. The Alpha King. The same silver eyes. The same quiet sorrow. The same silent promise that had followed her since childhood. Her voice trembled. So, it was you. The Alpha King did not answer immediately. He lowered his eyes for the first time since they had met. Not out of shame. Out of grief. I never wanted you to learn the truth this way. His quiet confession hurt more than any lie. Elara took a slow step backward. 17 years. You watched me. You protected me. You left every flower, every herb, every feather. And every time I asked you the truth, you looked at me and said you knew nothing. The Alpha King closed his eyes for a brief moment. I spoke the only words I was allowed to speak. Elara stared at him in disbelief. Aloud. Who could possibly command a king to lie? The wind swept through the clearing. His cloak moved gently behind him. When he finally looked at her again, the burden in his eyes seemed older than time itself. It was not the command of a person. It was the command of an oath. He slowly removed a small silver pendant from beneath his cloak. It carried the same crescent moon carved into the ancient stones. The White Guardian is forbidden to reveal himself. The promise demanded silence. If I had broken that oath before the appointed time, you would have been found, and you would not have survived. Elara looked at the pendant, then at the bracelet around her wrist. The symbols matched perfectly. Every mysterious gift, every warning, every disappearance, everything had been real, yet none of it eased the pain growing inside her heart. You decided my life without asking me. You chose my truth. You chose my future. And you expected me to simply trust your silence. The Alpha King said nothing, because there was nothing he could say. She was right. For years he had protected her body, but he had wounded her heart. Before either of them could speak again, the glowing tablet inside the cottage suddenly cracked. A blinding silver light burst through the windows. The two carved white stones began to tremble. The symbols upon them spread across the wooden table like flowing rivers of light. The entire cottage shook violently. The Alpha King's expression changed instantly. The oath. It is breaking. He rushed toward the doorway. Elara followed close behind. As they entered the cottage, the ancient tablet split into two pieces. From the broken stone rose countless glowing fragments that floated into the air like silver stars. They slowly formed a single message above the table. The promise is fulfilled. A second line appeared beneath it. The guardian may hide no longer. The light suddenly vanished. Silence filled the room. The Alpha King remained completely still. His greatest fear had become reality. The ancient oath that had bound his entire life was gone. There were no more secrets left to protect. No more silence to hide behind. He slowly turned toward Elara. For the first time, there was no king standing before her. No legendary white guardian. Only a man who had carried an impossible promise for 17 lonely years. I can finally tell you everything. His voice was barely above a whisper. But I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. Elara looked into his silver eyes. The answers she had searched for all her life were finally within reach. Yet the pain of betrayal still stood between them like an unbreakable wall. She wanted the truth, more than anything, but she no longer knew whether hearing it would heal her heart or break it forever. Outside, beyond the trembling trees of Silverpine Forest, a deep ancient rumble echoed beneath the mountains. The promise had ended, but something far older had just awakened. The ancient rumble beneath the mountains did not fade. It grew louder. The earth trembled beneath the Silverpine Forest as though something buried for centuries had finally awakened. Elara and the Alpha King stepped outside the cottage. The night sky had become strangely still. Not a single bird flew overhead. Even the wind had disappeared. Far beyond the towering pines, a pillar of silver light rose from the heart of the northern mountains, stretching high into the clouds. The Alpha King's face turned pale. For the first time since Elara had met him, she saw genuine fear. The promise held more than one secret, he said quietly. It was never meant only to protect you. Elara looked toward the glowing mountains. Then what was it protecting? He remained silent for several moments before answering. It was protecting the world from learning the truth before the right time. He slowly reached into his cloak and removed a weathered scroll sealed with the same crescent moon that appeared on the ancient stones. I was ordered to give this to you only after the oath was fulfilled. He placed the scroll into Elara's trembling hands. She carefully broke the old silver seal. Inside was a single parchment, its ink untouched by time. The first words stole the breath from her lungs. To the child of the promise. Her hands trembled as she continued reading. The scroll revealed that 17 years earlier, the leaders of every northern wolf clan had gathered beneath the full moon after an ancient prophecy resurfaced. The prophecy did not speak of a conqueror. It did not speak of a queen. It spoke of a girl abandoned at birth whose compassion would one day unite clans that had spent generations divided by fear and silence. But there was a condition. She could never grow up inside the palace. She could never know who she truly was. Only a life lived among ordinary people could shape the heart needed to fulfill the promise. So, an impossible decision had been made. The newborn child was secretly placed beneath the great oak tree beside Silverpine Forest. One guardian was chosen to protect her. Not from nearby, not from a distance, but every single day of her life. The Alpha King. Elara slowly lowered the scroll. Tears filled her eyes. Every lonely birthday, every freezing winter, every silent sunrise. He had been there, watching from the shadows, making sure she never lacked food, never lacked medicine, never truly stood alone. Yet he had never been allowed to tell her why. She looked toward him. All those years. You carried this alone. The Alpha King gave a small nod. I made the oath before I ever became king. I believed silence was the greatest gift I could give you. A painful smile crossed Elara's face. But silence was also the greatest wound. The Alpha King lowered his head. I know. Those two simple words carried 17 years of regret. Before either of them could speak again, the silver light rising from the mountains suddenly split into countless glowing streams that spread across the entire night sky. Every ancient symbol carved into the forest stones began to glow. The trees themselves seemed to awaken. The forest was responding to the fulfilled promise. Elara looked around in amazement. Everything that had remained hidden for centuries was revealing itself. And she finally understood. The mysterious gifts had never been meant to lead her to the White Wolf. They had been guiding her toward the truth about herself all along. But the final step of that journey still waited ahead. The first light of dawn slowly spread across the Silverpine Forest. For the first time in 17 years, Elara opened the door of her cottage, knowing there would be no mysterious gift waiting outside. The ancient promise had been fulfilled. There was no longer a reason for the White Guardian to hide in the shadows. She stepped into the cool morning air. The flat stone where countless flowers, feathers, and healing herbs had once appeared stood empty. Instead of sadness, she felt peace. Not because the gifts had ended, but because she finally understood what they had always meant. They had never been treasures. They had been silent promises. A promise that no matter how lonely the world became, someone would always be watching over her. Soft footsteps approached behind her. She turned. The Alpha King stood a short distance away. No royal guards. No armor. No crown. Only the man who had carried an impossible oath for most of his life. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Words were no longer enough to explain 17 years of silence. The Alpha King slowly removed the silver pendant from around his neck. The crescent moon that had guided every mystery shimmered beneath the morning sunlight. He gently placed it into Elara's hands. My duty as your guardian has ended, but my choice. He paused for a moment. Begins today. He did not ask for forgiveness. He did not ask for gratitude. He simply offered her the freedom to choose her own future. For the first time in her life, the choice belonged entirely to her. Elara looked down at the old pendant, then at the silver vine bracelet that still rested around her wrist. One had been carried by the guardian, the other by the girl he had protected. Together they completed the same ancient symbol. A slow smile touched her face. Not because the pain had disappeared. Some wounds needed time to heal. But because trust had finally been given the chance to grow. She stepped closer to the Alpha King. Without a single word, she placed the bracelet beside the pendant in his open hand. Then she gently closed his fingers around both. It was not forgiveness. Not yet. It was something far more important. A beginning. The Alpha King looked at her with quiet gratitude. For the first time, his silver eyes no longer carried the unbearable weight of secrecy. Only hope. As the morning sun climbed above the Silverpine Forest, the enormous white wolf appeared one final time upon a distant hill. Its snow-white fur shimmered like fresh winter light. It looked toward Elara, then toward the Alpha King. With one final peaceful howl, the legendary guardian turned and disappeared into the endless forest. This time, not as a creature hiding a secret, but as a legend whose promise had finally been fulfilled. The villagers would continue telling stories about the giant white wolf that wandered the ancient woods. Hunters would still search for the enormous tracks after every snowfall. Children would still wonder whether the mysterious guardian truly existed. Only two people would ever know the truth. The white wolf had never been a monster. It had been a promise. A promise kept every single sunrise for 17 years. And although the ancient oath had finally ended, a new journey had only just begun. One built not on silence, but on trust. not on destiny alone, but on choice. And somewhere deep within the heart of the Silverpine Forest, the wind gently carried the scent of fresh moon lilies once more, as if the forest itself had smiled. 3 peaceful months passed after the ancient promise was fulfilled. For the first time in 17 years, Silverpine Forest knew silence. No mysterious gifts appeared outside Elara's cottage. No giant wolf tracks marked the soft earth. The villagers slowly began to lose their fear. Some even greeted Elara with cautious smiles. Children no longer ran away when she walked through the marketplace. The curse they had whispered about for years seemed to have vanished with the White Guardian. Yet deep inside her heart, Elara knew something was different. The forest no longer felt asleep. It felt awake. Every morning she wandered beneath the towering pines, gathering herbs as she had done since childhood. But now the trees seemed to recognize her. Gentle breezes followed her footsteps. Birds landed nearby without fear. Even wounded animals no longer fled from her presence. It was as though the ancient forest itself had accepted her. The Alpha King often visited the cottage, not as a ruler, not as a guardian, simply as a man learning how to live without centuries of duty weighing upon his shoulders. Neither of them spoke much about the past. Some wounds still needed time. Some memories still carried pain. Trust was growing quietly, one sunrise at a time. Then, everything changed. One evening, as the sun disappeared behind the northern mountains, Elara noticed something strange. The moon lilies blooming around her cottage suddenly closed their petals. Every one of them. At the exact same moment, a cold wind swept through Silverpine Forest. The birds took flight. The wolves hidden among the trees released long, uneasy howls. The Alpha King immediately stepped outside. His silver eyes searched the darkening horizon. "I've never heard them sound like this," he whispered. Before Elara could answer, the ground trembled beneath their feet. Far away, beyond the northern mountains, a brilliant pillar of black light pierced the evening sky. Unlike the silver light that had marked the end of the promise, this light carried no warmth, only darkness, only silence. The Alpha King's expression changed instantly. His face grew pale. "That place," he said quietly. "It was sealed long before the promise began." Elara looked toward the distant mountains. "What is it?" For several long moments he said nothing. Then he answered with a voice heavy with dread. "It is where the first Alpha King buried the truth that even our ancestors feared." As the black light continued rising into the heavens, every wolf throughout the forest lowered its head toward the mountains. Not in respect, in fear. And for the first time since the ancient oath had ended, the Alpha King realized that protecting Elara had never been the final chapter. It had only been the beginning. The pillar of black light continued rising into the night sky. It did not fade. It grew stronger. Dark clouds gathered above the northern mountains, swallowing the stars one by one. A heavy silence settled over Silverpine Forest. Even the wind seemed afraid to move. Elara stood beside the Alpha King, unable to look away. "What was sealed there?" she asked quietly. The Alpha King kept his eyes fixed on the distant mountains. For generations, every Alpha King was taught one lesson. Never go beyond the Black Ridge. Never break the first seal. Elara frowned. "But the promise is over." He slowly nodded. "Yes. And that is exactly why the seal has awakened." Her heart tightened. "You mean the promise wasn't only protecting me?" He looked at her with quiet sadness. It was also protecting the seal. The realization struck her like ice. Everything that had happened over the past 17 years, every gift, every sacrifice, every secret, had been holding two destinies together. The moment the ancient oath was fulfilled, the barrier keeping the forgotten power asleep had begun to weaken. A distant roar rolled across the mountains. It was unlike anything Elara had ever heard. Not the howl of a wolf. Not the cry of any creature she knew. It sounded ancient, powerful, as though the mountain itself had awakened. The wolves throughout Silverpine Forest immediately retreated into the trees. Some lay flat against the ground. Others whimpered softly. The Alpha King's jaw tightened. They remember. Remember what? Elara whispered, the last time that sound was heard. He finally turned toward her. My father once told me that before our kingdom was united, there were guardians greater than wolves. They protected the balance between the human world and the ancient forest. But one guardian abandoned its oath. Its hunger for power nearly destroyed every clan. So the first Alpha King sealed it beneath the northern mountains. Elara looked back toward the black light. And now, the seal is breaking. The Alpha King nodded. It has waited centuries for the promise to end. A cold breeze swept through the clearing. The silver pendant still resting in Elara's hands suddenly became warm. The bracelet around her wrist shimmered with the same gentle light. Both ancient symbols began glowing together. The Alpha King stared at them in disbelief. The forest has chosen. Elara looked down. Chosen what?
His voice was calm,
but filled with certainty. It has chosen us. Not as guardian and child. Not as king and villager. But as the only two who knew the complete truth behind the ancient promise. Only they understood why the seal had awakened. Only they carried the symbols capable of opening the path to the northern mountains. The Alpha King slowly extended his hand toward Elara. This journey is yours to choose. There is no oath forcing you. No prophecy commanding you. For the first time, the decision belongs only to you. Elara looked at his outstretched hand, then toward the distant mountains where the pillar of black light pierced the heavens. She remembered every lonely sunrise, every mysterious gift, every silent sacrifice, every truth that had led them to this moment. Without hesitation, she placed her hand in his. The moment their hands touched, the bracelet and the pendant shone with brilliant silver light. Across the entire Silverpine Forest, thousands of moon lilies bloomed at once. The wolves lifted their heads toward the sky. And somewhere beyond the black ridge, a pair of enormous crimson eyes slowly opened in the darkness. Watching, waiting, smiling. The ancient promise had ended. But a far older war had finally begun. The crimson eyes disappeared as suddenly as they had appeared, but the feeling they left behind remained. Silverpine Forest no longer felt like the peaceful sanctuary Elara had always known. It felt as though every ancient tree was holding its breath. The moon lilies that had bloomed across the forest slowly folded their petals once again. Silence returned, yet it was no longer comforting. It was the silence before a storm. At first light, Elara and the Alpha King stood at the northern edge of the forest. Before them rose the Black Ridge. Its towering cliffs cut across the horizon like the walls of an ancient fortress. Mist clung to the jagged rocks, hiding everything beyond them. No birds crossed the ridge. No animals wandered near it. Even the oldest trees stopped growing a few steps from its shadow. Elara looked toward the mountains. So this is where the first seal was hidden. The Alpha King nodded. For centuries, every Alpha King was forbidden to cross this place. My ancestors guarded the border. But none of them ever entered. Why? Elara asked. Because they believed some truths should remain buried forever. He stepped forward. But that choice no longer belongs to us. As they approached the cliffs, the silver pendant around the Alpha King's neck and the bracelet on Elara's wrist began glowing once more. Their light spread across the ancient stone beneath their feet. Hidden carvings slowly emerged from the black rock. The same crescent moon, the same stars. But surrounding them was another symbol neither of them had seen before. A pair of enormous wings stretching across the mountains. Elara gently touched the carving. The ground trembled beneath her fingertips. A deep rumble echoed through the valley. Then the cliff itself began to move. Massive slabs of stone slowly slid apart with a thunderous roar. Dust poured into the air. For the first time in centuries, a hidden passage opened through the Black Ridge. Cold air drifted out from the darkness beyond. It carried the scent of ancient rain and forgotten time. The Alpha King stared into the tunnel. I never believed this place truly existed. Elara took a careful step forward. Inside the passage, the walls shimmered with thousands of glowing silver crystals. Each crystal reflected fragments of old memories. She saw wolves running beneath full moons, ancient kings standing beside towering white guardians, children laughing among moon lilies, an entire history hidden from the world. "This isn't just a cave," she whispered. "It's a memory." The Alpha King slowly nodded. "The mountain remembers everything." As they walked deeper into the passage, the glowing crystals became brighter. Suddenly, Elara stopped. One crystal glowed more brightly than the others. Inside it, she saw the image of a young warrior kneeling beneath the full moon. Before him stood an enormous white wolf. The warrior placed his hand over his heart. The white wolf lowered its head. Then both disappeared into silver light. "What is this?" Elara whispered. The Alpha King's expression became solemn. "The very first guardian. The one who made the original promise." Before either of them could move closer, a violent crack echoed through the tunnel. One by one, the glowing crystals began to shatter. The beautiful memories trapped inside them vanished into darkness. A freezing wind rushed through the passage. Then came a deep voice, ancient, powerful, filled with quiet hatred. "So, after all these centuries, someone has finally returned." The Alpha King instinctively stepped in front of Elara. His silver eyes searched the darkness. But there was no one there. Only endless shadows. Then, far ahead, two enormous crimson eyes slowly opened once again. This time, they did not disappear. They were waiting. The crimson eyes remained fixed upon them. They did not blink. They did not move. Yet their presence alone filled the ancient passage with unbearable pressure. Elara struggled to breathe. Every instinct urged her to run. But something deeper, the same quiet courage that had carried her through 17 years of unanswered questions, forced her to remain where she stood. The Alpha King slowly stepped forward. His silver eyes never left the darkness. "You have slept long enough," he said calmly. The ancient voice echoed through the mountain. "And yet, it was your promise that awakened me." A deep laugh rolled through the tunnel. It was not loud. It was worse. It sounded ancient enough to shake the stones themselves. "You protected one child and abandoned an entire kingdom." The Alpha King's expression hardened. "The promise saved countless lives."
"No,"
the voice answered. "It merely delayed what could never be stopped." Without warning, the darkness ahead began to move. Black mist poured across the stone floor like flowing water. It climbed the walls, covered the shattered crystals. One by one, the beautiful memories trapped inside them disappeared forever. Elara tightened her grip around the silver pendant. No. The pendant suddenly grew warm. So did the bracelet around her wrist. Silver light burst from both ancient symbols, pushing the black mist backward. The darkness hissed as though it had been burned. For the first time, the unseen creature sounded surprised. "The guardian symbols. They still obey the child." The Alpha King looked toward Elara. "They're responding to you. I don't know how. You don't have to. Just trust your heart." She closed her eyes. Every memory returned. The mysterious flowers, the healing herbs, the silent protection, the lonely mornings, the white wolf watching from the trees. The promise had never been about fear. It had always been about hope. As that realization filled her heart, the silver light became brighter. It spread across the tunnel floor. Ancient carvings hidden beneath centuries of dust slowly appeared. Hundreds of wolves, the first guardians. And at the center, a giant white wolf standing beside a young girl, exactly like Elara. Beneath the carving, forgotten words glowed with brilliant silver light. "The promise ends. The bond remains." The Alpha King quietly read the ancient inscription. The guardians were never protecting only one life. They were protecting the bond between courage and compassion. The crimson eyes narrowed. The ancient voice became colder. "Then let that bond be tested." A deafening roar exploded through the mountain. The remaining crystals shattered all at once. From the swirling darkness stepped an enormous creature. Its body resembled a wolf, but its fur was darker than the night itself. Crimson markings covered its shoulders like burning scars. Its eyes glowed with the same terrible light that had watched them from beyond the black ridge. The creature was twice the size of the White Guardian. Every step cracked the ancient stone beneath its feet. Yet the Alpha King did not move. He quietly stepped in front of Elara, not because an oath demanded it, because it was his choice. Elara gently placed one hand on his shoulder. You don't stand alone anymore. For the first time, the Alpha King did not try to protect her by himself. He simply nodded. Side by side, they faced the ancient beast together. The creature lowered its massive head. A slow smile spread across its terrifying face. So, the final guardians have finally arrived. The mountain shook once again, and the battle that had been waiting for centuries was about to begin.